and welcome to episode 7 of our KNX Top Tip series. Today I'd like to talk to you about brightness thresholds. So let's jump in to ETS and have a look. So for today's demonstration, we're going to configure a single function to control some spotlights. And in this example, we're going to have a brightness threshold of 500 lux. So what this means is if the brightness in the room at the point of a motion detected, at the point that motion is detected, if the brightness in the room is less than 500 lux, the lights will automatically be turned on, else they won't be automatically turned on. The brightness threshold parameter is visible in both switching, dimming value transmitter, scenes and constant light control, and advanced. The HVAC and extractor function types don't by default rely on brightness threshold because they're not brightness threshold type things. You always want to turn on your extractor fan and you always want to turn on your HVAC regardless of the brightness in the room. So with regard to setting the brightness threshold, you have three options. Option number one would be to simply set in ETS the value, say 350 lux, for example. The second way in which you can set the brightness threshold is to enable some external group objects. So to do that, we go to advanced behavior, we scroll to the bottom, where here we've got brightness thresholds, and we set this to this second option here, show group objects and overwrite parameter values on ETS download. If we now go to our group objects, we have two additional group objects for function 1 spotlights. One of them is a brightness threshold input. So you can send a brightness threshold to this group object, and that could come, for example, from ETS directly, or you can connect this up to a GUI with a slider in some kind of server. Maybe you want to visualize that in a touchscreen somewhere in the house and give the client the ability to change the brightness thresholds, or maybe you want to give the ability for the facilities manager, for example, to change those brightness thresholds. That can be done via this object. You also have this object, which is the brightness threshold teaching object. So if you want to work with your client to understand the brightness level that they deem is acceptable for that room, you could go into that room, dim the lights to the appropriate level that they think is enough light for them. And at the point that the lights are at that level, you can send a 1-bit 1 to this brightness threshold teaching object, and that will teach the motion sensor. It will basically establish what the current brightness level of the room is using the lux sensor, and then use that value as the brightness threshold going forward. So that's it, guys. There's three ways to set your brightness threshold. Directly inside ETS, here on the brightness threshold, via the brightness threshold teaching object, or via the brightness threshold absolute value input group object. Thanks for watching.